think I'll stand because there's so many of you in the back. Obviously, I don't have a prepared speech. How many minutes? Because we went a bit longer, and I'll shut up if you tell me to.
Let's go up to 10 minutes. Yes.
A little bit of background. I'm Armenian, born in Cyprus. My father's family came from Antep. My grandmother's family came from Kayseri. And I was born in Cyprus. My parents were born in Turkey. They came as babies to Cyprus. And as we grew up, I went to English school, English kindergarten, and I really felt sometimes that I was invisible because Armenian history, geography, Armenia was never mentioned in the English school that I went to. But I had, obviously, from my grandmother, stories from my grandmother and from our Turkish neighbors. By the way, we lived in a community of Turkish people in our street, and we were very, very friendly with them. They came to our homes and so on. And I said to my grandmother once, "You've told me so many terrible stories. Why do you live with Turks?" And she said, "My dear, these are not the same people. They have nothing to do with that." She was a very open-minded, extraordinary person. And I used to wonder at that age how it was for people, for Armenians who still lived in Turkey. It was something that, you know, I wanted to go back, and my father wouldn't let us go back to visit because he said, "You go, you break your heart, stay where you are." And when I came to England and went to university, I wrote, as Gabriel said, a book on Xenakis, who was an exile in Greece, from Greece. And then the Gorky book, and I really began to delve into my history through the Gorky book. And when it was done, Ato Megoyan made it into a movie, and I went to the Cannes Film Festival and I met Hrant Dink. And I spoke in the press conference positively about the film, and he did the opposite. And I was quite shocked. And then he explained to me years later that the reason he wasn't happy with the film was because it had violent scenes in it, and he had wished that Batum had made a film which could have been shown easily in Turkey, and because of those scenes it wasn't screened in Turkey, and it was a film which the Turkish government tried to suppress but wasn't able to do so, so it went out anyway. And so we knew of each other, and then finally one day I went to Turkey to give a talk. And I called him and said, "I'm coming to Istanbul." And he said, "I'll come and meet you." And I remember going to his office for an interview. And I was amazed because the table was covered in newspapers. And there were articles about my book and performances and so on. And I said, "How come you felt free to write all this?" And from him, I began to get more details of the way Armenians lived in Turkey and the kind of problems that they had. For instance, that they had to change their names, they had to take Turkish names. They couldn't speak Armenian in the street. He said, "My mother always said, 'Don't call me mama, call me anne.'" Armenian history was banned from books, and books with Armenian history had been burnt and taken away. There was a wealth tax in 1948, when a lot of the Armenians were very heavily taxed in a short space of time, and they had to leave the country. And you know, I began to understand the kind of difficulties that they were living under, and yet here was this Democrat who behaved like he lived in Paris or London, and wrote simply about everything that he thought was important. And other newspapers picked up his stories, and they used them. So I realized, we both realized that we had a lot of very strong concerns, that we shared the same concerns. One of my problems was also that there were Islamized Armenians. I knew there were thousands of them, and what was happening to these people. And he told me that in his newspaper they would run adverts for people who were trying to find their lost relatives. So finally one day, and I don't know what made me, every time we had a conversation, I would take my camcorder and just film it. And he would say, "What are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with these pictures?" And then one day I said, "I want to make a film, and we're going to compare our lives. I'm a writer, I'm free in London, I can do whatever I like, write whatever I like, and you're here and you're running this newspaper in Armenian and Turkish, and you've already been charged. And he said, good idea, let's do it. So we started. He came over to London. He spoke after he'd addressed the Ankara Parliament the day after. And we didn't see that clip, it's on this film. And finally, he was very, very much pushed into the media, exceedingly. There wasn't 10 minutes where he could sit down without somebody calling him up and saying, will you come and do an interview? And I was very aware of that, and I thought that he was being exposed unnecessarily. And he became demonized as public enemy number one by the nationalists. On the other hand, he was also very popular with other people. And there was a group of journalists who surrounded him and with whom he went on trips, and he took a group of them to Yerevan, and he had tremendous allies and friends who wanted to support him and did support him. Every time there was a demonstration against him at the newspaper, those journalists were there to support him. Well, as you all know, the threats increased until his newspaper was flooded, the telephone never stopped, and he was holed up in this office refusing to move, and he refused to go away. He had plans to go and live in Armenia, I think, but it didn't happen, and he was shot. The day that he was shot, I was told by Penn that I should go, or would I please go and give an interview at the BBC on him, because I realized that very few people knew about Hrant in the media, really. And so I took a bit of my clip of a film and went off and said, I'll come and give an interview as long as I don't have to see his body on the screen. And I did the interviews and I saw the film, and I wanted to do a commemoration of him for Amnesty and Penn and other organizations 40 days after his death, which would give me time to adjust and do something. And it's also traditional in Armenian religion, in our culturally, the 40th day is the day that we commemorate. And so I thought, well, these people have never seen him. They've probably barely seen a picture of him. And if the BBC is going to use my film, why don't I use it myself? So we made a 15-minute film with a Turkish Alevi friend of mine who has a studio, and we showed it at this commemoration. And then it was people were so interested in it, I decided to make a longer version, which is a 45-minute version, and this is it. That's really the story, and it goes on because I am now proposing to make a television version and contextualize it and give people who don't know the story, don't know the background, an opportunity to understand what he stood for, why there are thousands of people who came to his funeral, why the movement continues now. There is a Hrant Dink Foundation which does extraordinary work with young people, bringing Turks and Armenians together from Turkey and Armenia. Just amazing work, and they're very strong and getting stronger every year. And I think with the internet and with young people who have more access to information, obviously there's a big change. I think it was the Martin Luther King of the Armenians. He knew he was going to die, I think, and he faced it and he went. But his effect has been absolutely amazing on the Armenian diaspora, as well as in Turkey and elsewhere. Yes?
Thank you very much.